World War II started on September 1st, 1939. The United States entered 2 years later when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. The attack on Pearl Harbor, also known as the Battle of Pearl Harbor, was a surprise bombing by the Imperial Japanese Navy against the United States naval base located at that spot. Isoroku Yamamoto is perhaps Japan's greatest strategist and the officer who would contrive the surprise air attack on U.S. naval forces at Pearl Harbor. Despite worsening Japanese-American relations, especially in light of Japan's alliance with Germany and Italy, Yamamoto initially opposed war with the U.S., mostly out of fear that prolonged conflict would go badly for Japan. But once the government of Prime Minister Tojo Hideki decided on war, Yamamoto argued that only a surprise attack aimed at crippling U.S. naval forces in the Pacific had any hope of victory. He also predicted that if war with America lasted more than 1 year, Japan would lose. Yamamoto meticulously planned and carried out the Japanese airstrike on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor on Oahu Island, Hawaii, December 7, 1941. Waves of dive bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters descended on U.S. battleships, capsizing, destroying, or immobilizing several U.S. battleships within the first 30 minutes of the raid. The attack was a decided success, especially in catching the United States off guard, and resulted in the destruction of 180 U.S. aircraft and more than 3,400 American casualties.
The United States entered World War II after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. President Franklin Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan in perhaps the most memorable speech of his career. The speech, in which he called Japan's act a deliberate deception, received thunderous applause from Congress. The same president who once said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself," declared with equal conviction that the nation would never forget the character of Japan's onslaught against us, and vowed that the unbounding determination of our people will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God. Congress and millions of Americans who had been hearing details of the attack in the news shared the president's outrage and commitment to defending the nation.
Husband E. Kimmel, also known as Kim, was a 4-star admiral in the United States Navy and commander-in-chief of the United States Pacific Fleet at the time of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Admiral Husband E. Kimmel replaced James Richardson as the general leading the defense against the Japanese. Kimmel informed Roosevelt of Pearl Harbor's deficiencies, but accepted placement there, trusting Washington would notify him of any intelligence pointing to the attack.
All of the people that witnessed this tragic event would forever remember the horrors that would change their lives forever. One witness, Hubert Dale Gano, a retired U.S. Navy commander, said, "A very loud explosion rattled our windows. We rushed outside to see a string of airplanes in a shallow dive toward the ships at the end of our peninsula. Anti-aircraft tracer shells floating up toward the lead aircraft. I could see the rising sun emblem that decorated the side of the aircraft, which identified them as Japanese."
When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, more than one ship was sitting in the harbor that day. In fact, 8 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 4 destroyers were present in the harbor when the bombs started to fall. The most devastating loss of the attack at Pearl Harbor was the bombing of the USS Arizona, accounting for nearly half of the 2,400 total deaths. 1,177 men died by the bombing of this battleship. An armored piercing bomb exploded, igniting the gunpowder magazine. Admiral Kimmel, who saw the explosion, said he saw the Arizona lift out of the water, then sink back down, way down.
Pearl Harbor was an incredible tragedy, but the war seemed inevitable. America's determined will to represent all the deaths for the attack on Pearl Harbor proved that America was destined to be a part of this war.